What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Meet the Critters podcast. This is episode 39, and we are finally getting into our collabs, talking about pork. So I'm Kyle.
And I'm Joe.
And let's get into it. So we're going to go ahead and bring Tyler up. And for those who don't know and didn't pay attention to the last episode we did, this is going to be the first episode of our pig collabs. All of us put out videos talking about our genetics, what pigs we're raising, why and how, for where we are, our locations, climates, and what we're trying to do for meat quality. So we're going to get into it. So Tyler, what's going on?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. You were all excited the last episode to try and beat Joe.
Yeah, it's I guess it's not going to happen at this point.
Yeah, now it's definitely not.
Although I will say, you guys, last episode you nominated me as the backup.
Oh, that is right. When I inevitably get the call from CBS and take that plane ride to Fiji to starve in the jungle for 40 days.
So I'm banking on that.
Right. Well, that's at least 4 episodes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Get out of here, Kyle.
But the problem with that is I'm not on the show. Joe is. So every show that you're on, he's also on.
Yeah.
So that still means you're 4 behind.
Good point.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not great at math, but I was able to figure that one out pretty quick. Who's down here in the comments? Let's shout them out. We got the Lots Project over here. Meatheads. That's here. We got Rachel Brown as well. Good to have you guys. Oh, the old faithfuls. So, Tyler, what's been going on since the last time you were on?
Well, we butchered a bunch of pigs. That's why I'm here, I suppose. That went pretty well, and you can feel free when you pull my pictures up. You can critique me. That's okay. You know, first time doing it myself. So
we'll get into it. I have notes.
Yeah. But we did that. It went really well. Got meat in the freezer. So first time doing it. We'll be back next time around. The one thing I would say, our animals weren't probably as big as I would have liked them, just based on the breed. And I know we'll dive into that here in a second. But you learn, and I'll just grow them out longer this next time around.
Yeah. No, and that's all of it. We'll definitely get into it because I'm coming to that realization as well of just like, I think my ideas are good. I don't think this cycle is going to be the best.
Yeah. And what I've found too is, a lot of the feed, I think, had part to do with it. Yeah. It wasn't, here I am kind of blaming the breed right away, but I think a lot of the feed that I was putting in, obviously first time doing it, trying to go a little bit on a budget. So, I was going corn. Obviously, corn's going to give, a lot of fat content. That wasn't the only thing I was feeding, but I was definitely going a little heavier on that than I probably should have. So, again, lessons learned. And this time around, we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually going to try to have them forage a little more this time around, kind of let them go probably a little bit more or a little less feed, I'd say, but over a longer period of time to see what kind of happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's go ahead and use that as a segue, talking about blaming our breeds that we all chose. So for those who haven't watched the video, let's start with you, Tyler. Like, what do you have for breeds?
Yeah, so this past year, this is, like I said, the first year doing it. I didn't know anything about pigs, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to find whatever pigs I can get interested in them. And I found they were American Guinea Hog and Hampshire crosses. They were $60 a piece. So that was honestly, and I put that in the video, that was the selling point for me. They're cheap. What really could go wrong there? So that's why we got them. I mean, honestly, if they die, it's $120 down the drain. Now, what a lot of people don't know is our sow that we had, she was actually bred at the time, and we didn't know that. So I ended up having 8 piglets with them. So I got 12 pigs for $120. So that was a pretty good deal.
Right.
But anyway, the American Guinea Hog Hampshire crosses.
Not bad at all.
Oh yeah, it was nice. And we lost a couple, but we were able to keep most of them alive. We noticed though pretty much right away that they weren't putting on the growth that you would expect. Years ago, we raised Idaho pasture pigs over at my dad's property, and those definitely had better growth than what we had here. So it was definitely a kind of a longer term game.
Yeah. The American Guineas are a tough one because I've known people that love them and I've known people that hate them.
Yep.
Like the slaughterhouse I worked at was like, we're not even going to slaughter them anymore. Don't bring them here. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, if I were raising just American Guinea, there's no way. They're way too small. And as I started to kind of read more about them, seeing, they pretty much only get up to about 200 pounds, and that's over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Now, cross with a Hampshire, it's kind of all over the place. Our boar, he's huge, and he's really lean. He looks like a Hampshire. The guy told me that they were 75-25 on the American Guinea side. I don't think that's the case. I think it's probably, if anything, more like 50-50. But again, without really knowing kind of the background and the genetics, it's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to get that with any kind of crossbreeding. That's like the Idaho pasture pig. They've been bred over generations, and they still have variation. I mean, Cruz touched base on that in his video. He's still seeing size difference in the breed. And some are having a longer nose, some are upturned nose.
Yeah.
And I think they had I can't remember exactly how many generations they had before they even considered it a breed in its own. So, I mean, having a first generation cross or a second generation cross, you're going to have a ton of variation. So they might be 25-75. He just happens to have that.
Correct.
Took after the Hampshire genetics more.
Yeah, and as I've kind of learned with these, I would prefer that. Obviously you're going to have, a little bit more meat on your bones there. Some of the males that we actually butchered, they were definitely, you could tell that the frames, they were different. They were kind of all over the place. So we'll see what happens this next time around. Now I was raising Idahos as well. So we butchered one. I actually started with 3. We butchered one we lost pretty early on. And then one, we actually had a litter, and she died. I remember I was messaging you guys about most likely an internal infection. So that was tough. But to your point, Joe, the one that died actually was completely different structurally than the other 2.
Yeah. When I first seen your pigs before you got in, in your early videos, before you kind of got into the breeds that you had, pointing them out to people, a couple of them I thought Coon. Because they seem to be on the smaller side. So they took after that. And then you were saying Idaho pasture pigs. I've raised a couple Idaho pasture pigs and I really liked them. Mine were from direct stock from the original breeding stock. I got them from a guy that had bought some directly from that farm. And honestly, I enjoyed them. And if I could have found them when I was looking for pigs a couple of years ago, I probably would have those right now. In a pasture setup, compared to what my Mangalitzas are growing out at versus what I grew my Idaho pasture pigs out at, it would have made more sense for me to go that route, honestly.
And it seems like the crossbreeding thing is an interesting thing because it seems like the more breeds you kind of get into it, you come up with some unique animals. Like I know Kyle, your red, your new Red his name is.
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. But it's also hard to control, like you guys are saying with the Idahos. 3 different breeds going in there, they can spit out really any way, shape, or form.
It's real interesting because it's like I'm dealing with that now because it's, again, I'm starting with a pure Hereford pig. And then with this batch that we have now, I knew for a fact it was half Mangalitsa, half Ossibah. So I know I'm dealing with those 3 breeds, and being able to look at the piglets that we have. And now having put one through the shop, again, I have the benefit of also processing Herefords from these genetics and processing Ossibahs and Mangalitzas from the other genetics because I've processed pigs from the same farm. So I know what they both look like separately. Now together, it gets crazy. It's so weird. I have some pictures of all of our pork. We'll bring that up when we get into the meat quality section of all this. But it's when I processed that boar that we put through, all of my pigs right now, they're almost 6 months old or right around 6 months old. he hung at 95 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh.
Yep.
All right. I was already planning on raising these guys till about end of April, maybe early May. Anyway, get them out before the next batch of piglets comes in. So I knew there was going to be a longer grow out, but I'm like, I'm hoping for 180 pound hang weight by then, but I might lose my shirt on all these. Like, this is a learning experience. I won't lose my shirt, but it'll be like, yeah, definitely didn't make the profit we needed to on these because of the longer grow out. But that's what you get when you're working with it. But I cut into that thing. It was the size of what I would expect a normal Osaba Mangalitsa to be. The fat quality was all Manga Osaba. But if you look at the marbling and where the muscle structure is, it's all Hereford. So it's just Hereford, like a Hereford body on a small frame. Yeah. It's crazy to be able to look at that from like a bird's eye view and be like, oh, that's genetics. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I think we have 2 of the piglets from that Idaho. Now, she was bred with the Guinea Hampshire cross. So I'm really curious to see kind of what's going to go on there. It's hard to tell this early on. They all just pretty much black and white. I believe I can kind of tell by the snouts, a little flatter like they would typically be in the Idahos. But as they grow, I'm hoping to kind of differentiate, and hopefully we'll see what happens. But it'll be an interesting breed. A lot going on there.
Yeah, and then you look at my herd, and I have like a complete
Noah's Ark of pigs.
And that was more so I bought what I could find because piglets were going crazy. I mean, I didn't get a smoking deal like, you did, Tyler, but I drove all the way down to almost a Pittsburgh, PA to get my original Mangalitsa crosses. And I had 4 Mangalitsa Idaho pasture pig crosses, 2 Mangalitsa crossed on Old Spot, and 1 pure Mangalitsa out of that I bought from that lady. As soon as I got home that day, someone in 2 towns over posted Mangalitsa cross piglets for like $25 more a piece than I paid for these ones. Now these ones, they were 4 or 5 months old already when I bought them at $100 a piece. So I took I think it was,
that's not bad,
2.5, 3 hours from here, something like that, 3-hour ride one way. And I took the Rogue I have a little enclosed trailer my grandfather built, and that's what I hauled them in. And I hauled them all the way back, and they grew quite a bit slower than I was expecting. I butchered the Idaho pasture pig crosses, hung heavier than the Old Spot cross of Mangalitsa. I don't know if it was the Old Spot genetics they had bred in. They were horrible. They were like, I think they were the same age, and they hung at 140 at 13 months old. And they got fed the same as everybody else. The Mangalitsa, the pure Mangalitsa, actually was the heaviest, the second heaviest one out of the group.
Yeah. And
he was the same age. They were all born within the same month. But there wasn't, at 13 months old, when I processed those pigs, there wasn't the marbling. There was a ton of fat, but there wasn't much marbling in the meat. And I just wasn't impressed. You didn't get that extra flavor you're supposed to get. And I'm like, well, like I've said plenty of times, I can't afford to raise them out any longer than that because my pig cost breakdown, I lost money this year on doing that. And I'm sure I lost money last year because I didn't change my prices, and it was no different. Same that longer grow out. So the different genetics I'm bringing in now, like the last litter I had that was out of the Mangalitsa Berkshire Hamp cross sow and my Berkshire Duroc boar. Those were completely different body style. Like Kyle was saying, once you start picking and looking, they were very blocky and wide like their dad. I didn't expect them to grow super fast because Berkshires are actually kind of a little bit slower growing than some of the commercial, like Hereford are faster and, York and those ones. So I wasn't expecting a super fast grow out, but a bigger chop. Like I need to find some chops that I processed from those original Mangalitsa crosses because they were super small. Like I could fit them in the palm of my hand as a 12-month-old pig.
Yeah.
You're kind of.
Well, I think that goes into, because we've had this conversation a bunch about mangas, And it's at the moment of the moment of time that we're at right now, mangas are hot. Like on all the homesteading pages, all of it, it's everyone's getting into mangas because they're the cute curly-haired pigs that look awesome and they're super fun, and a bunch of big YouTubers have them, and this, that, and the other.
It's the Highlander of pigs.
Yeah, it needs to be explained to people that you're not going to end up with the same quantity out of a York that you would out of like a Yorkshire or a Hereford or things like that. Because especially for a lot of new people, pigs are pigs. Like they're like, yeah, I'm just going to bring this thing to the butcher and I'm going to get pork chops and bacon back. And it's like, you're going to get pork chops and bacon. I promise you that. But it's not going to be a dinner plate. It's going to be a tea plate. It's going to be about this big, and it's going to be, depending on how you fed them, because again, it's your first time for a lot of people, it's going to be 3/4 fat because you were just like, corn. These things love corn. They just eat it all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
we didn't even pull bacon from ours because they were so small, the fat layer, like it's not even worth it. So a lot of that I took chunks of belly that I'm just going to fry up, and then the rest was grind.
I saved the bellies off of the boar I put in just because they were about an inch. Like they weren't huge, but I was like, that's a belly. All right. That's more than I thought I was going to get. I thought it was just going to be spare ribs. Like I thought it was literally going to keep the spare rib on. And that was it. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's going to be thick cut. That's for sure. Cause I got to make up for the fact that it's about that thick. Like, but again, it is what it is. Like, that's the thing that for anyone really getting going in it for the first time, I almost highly suggest going in on the like more production breeds because it gives you a buffer of time because it's going to be way quicker from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's less that can go wrong in that time. You start having pigs for 13 months. One, it's going to cost you money. Two, they're going to know their area way better than that 6-month-old that you put in the cooler. Like it's there. Yeah. I would almost heavily suggest getting into Yorkshires or a Hereford or Berkshire or Duroc, like something that is around. Then get into, hey, I kind of want to play with these heritage breeds and see what they're about. Like I didn't do that because I'm an idiot. I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's drive 3 hours to Vermont.
Yeah,
and pick up this
me neither.
Yeah, exactly. Like do as I say, not as I do kind of situation. But you're gonna have a better time, like your first time.
Yeah. I had a couple pigs come through the shop, and first time the people ever raised pigs, she bought them at the auction, not knowing what you're getting.
Yep.
And I'm almost positive that they were Cooney Coon crossed with Yorks. They were completely white like a York, but once I got them on skinning cradles and got them cleaned up. You could see their nose was kind of turned up, shorter like a Cooney Coon. And I asked him, I said, because he's like, well, what do you think about them? And I just told him, I said, they're small. I want you to understand that because I didn't want them coming back unhappy because they were expecting a lot more meat. It was their first time. And we talked through different things that they were doing, and it doesn't sound like they were doing anything completely wrong. I gave him some pointers on different ways to feed and water that would help him with his chore time, but also, give him increase. But they were like 85 pounds and 127 pound hang weight. And he said he had them for like 7 months.
Yeah.
So, and like I told him, if I knew exactly how much feed he put into them and everything, I could have done a cost breakdown per pound. And I said, yeah, it sounds, you might have put a little less feed into them, but your price per pound for that little tiny pig is going to be way higher than it would have at a 200 pound hang weight pig that dressed out at 160, 170, or 250 pounds that dressed out at 180 pounds. You got to think of it that way too. I told him you could have took that second pig, sold it to a family member to pay for the feed and everything, and kind of at least break even on the first batch. And I tried being as encouraging as possible because I want to see them keep doing it. I'm always there to encourage people, but I just was giving them tips and pointers in case they did want to keep doing it on what to look for in pigs and different ways of feeding and watering and, the whole 9 yards.
It's probably okay for a first timer to raise smaller animals if they have an understanding and don't expect a ton of meat. But you guys, I'm sure you see it all the time where people come in and they're expecting 200 pounds of meat off of an animal.
Right.
It's just not happening.
Yeah, and they're really
say.
good about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As a butcher talking to new farmers and homesteaders, we know you're new within the first 5 seconds because most of you go, so how much bacon am I getting?
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's a 300-pound pig that you're going to get a bunch of bacon off of or a small dog that you brought in on a trailer. Like, that is the first question out of the first year farmers of just like, so how much bacon am I going to get? And then I have to be the bad guy and go, you're not. Dependent on the situation. Yeah, so Canadian Farmstead down here, he has coonies. Canadian Farmstead says, I'm happy my pigs were smaller the first year I raised some. Yes, that is the flip side. You're absolutely right. If you do have a smaller animal, they are easier to deal with. Like, especially if you've never been around pigs, all of a sudden you get around a 300-pound live weight like feeder that you're trying to get on a trailer. That can get a little scary for some people.
That's what I did. Is the first 4 years that I raised pigs, I bought really nice commercial crossbred feeders from a local guy that raises really nice pigs, AI breeds. But I bought them in the fall because they were really cheap. Never done pigs before. I did a bunch of reading and watched videos and stuff. But I didn't know how to judge those animals' weight by looking at them live. And I think those first ones hung at like 280, 300-ish pounds. And I didn't have the infrastructure on my old property, and I don't have great infrastructure here, but I can walk up and shoot in my pasture now. I have a butcher shop. Before I knew how to process myself, I had to take them somewhere. So getting those things in a livestock trailer, it was the old bucket method, walking across the property, trying to get them in a livestock trailer. And we had some interesting times. We had a couple take us for rides, but it's a learning lesson. I could see the small thing, but that goes back to understanding you're raising a smaller pig. So the next time you do buy commercial pigs, you're not getting into like a shock of, not letting that smaller carcass gaslight you into thinking that pigs are great and they're easy to handle. And then you get a 300-400 pound live weight feeder because they grew 3 times faster than what you were used to the first year.
That is the scenario. There's really no gray area with first-time farmers. I've probably only seen like 2 or 3 people really nail it the first year because they had guidance. They had someone there helping them. Yep. Either the pigs come in and they are so small because they got a breed that somebody told them to get because they saw it on a YouTube channel and they thought it was going to be a great idea and it wasn't. Or they get into like they get some Yorkshires, which is great. Like, that's awesome. But then all of a sudden they keep them to 8 months because they can't get into a butcher in time. And all of a sudden they have a 300-pound carcass that they're like, oh God, I have 3 of these. And it's like, yeah, man. Like,
that was another thing I was going to bring up is call whatever processor you're planning on using or a couple. Call before you get your pigs and see where they're booking out to. Because, small guys like me and Kyle, we're not booking out next fall right away. It gives you a little bit of playroom, but a lot of shops, especially around me, are booked out. I know most of the local shops are already booking into 25, like March, April of 2025.
Someone please call me now. Call me now, please.
So call ahead and see if you have to take a slot at a certain amount of time, then get your piglet. Say you're looking at a commercial piglet, 6 to 7 months to match that butcher date. Because a lot of times people get their pigs, raise them for 2-3 months, and then, I'm going to call a processor. Well, now you got to hold them, 6 more months or 7 more months, or hope that you can get on a cancellation list for when you need to get in. Right. And then if, most people getting into new pigs don't have a way to haul them. So now you got to line up somebody that can haul them, and you got stuff you got to think of ahead of time. I thought of the hauling and stuff, but the processing I didn't. But one of my friends is like hey, you might want to call the processor as soon as you pick those piglets up. Actually, the guy that I was buying piglets from, he said, call now, get your processing dates for 6 or 7 months. He's like, take those dates and just raise the pigs to it. And what you get is what you get. So that's what I did. And that's what I always continue to do until I started processing my own animals.
Or just learn to do it yourself too. I mean, that's kind of what we dove into. I mean, we went all in this year, and I think it was honestly probably our best decision. We didn't have to worry about scheduling anything out, kind of learn from you guys. So I appreciate that. But even if you have a hack job the first couple times, you know, it is what it is. It's still meat.
Let me tell everyone who just heard that, you're going to have a hack job the first couple
absolutely.
Times. Like
what the lead cutter at the shop I trained at, his saying was, everything looks great as burger or ground. You can't go wrong. I mean, most people are going to utilize it that way. But also on the side note of that, Tyler, is you had smaller pigs. You had access to a small tractor. If you don't have equipment or anything and you get a 600-pound live weight pig,
exactly. That's where it gets rough. Well, we already kind of worked ourselves over there. Let's start talking about meat quality. So, Tyler, we'll start with you again. Like, you've got all the breeds in there.
Yeah.
Like, how did everything come out?
I mean, I really couldn't have been happier with the turnout of the meat. You know, the chops, they were small. I mean, all the cuts were small. Like I said, smaller animal, you're just going to have that. But as far as flavor, I say I like fattier cuts, which is why I left that 27-inch layer of fat on there. But it was really good. We just cooked those up last night. Very, very tender. I mean, it almost ate like steak. So, I mean, I can't complain. I know I sound like I'm selling my own product here, but
I mean, you are, but you're supposed
to.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, and so for the audio listeners, we do have a picture of Tyler's pork chops on the screen, which I couldn't figure out how to put it in present, so now I'm just completely blocking Tyler out. But no, I mean, gorgeous red color. It does have a decent fat cap on it, which is what to be expected with the breeds that you got. But yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and it looks like it's the rib chop section. There's nice fat layer in under that top cap. So
the one thing I definitely kind of jacked up a little bit. We were making sausage and we were in a pinch, and I probably could have ratioed it out a little better. It did get pretty fatty. Now that's okay for me, but my wife, I know she's not too thrilled about it. I mean, the seasonings, everything we used there, that was great. But again, a little fat on the fatty side. So next time I'll just kind of pull some of that back.
Yeah. And that's once you do it enough, you'll learn what it looks like when it's mixed in the bucket. Like most of the time now, while I'm cutting, I'll be watching. We talked about this with the burger, I think last week or the week before. You could tell what you want in your fat ratio in your sausage, and you play around with it. Once it just comes with experience and doing it more frequently.
Yeah, because I know I like a little bit fattier. Brian's in the chat, and he's going to get me on this one. I like a fattier sausage. I don't like them lean. I like them big and fatty. So I will put a little more fat into it. I just think I'm going to stop digging that hole.
And that's, I mean, the chops, I didn't even trim the chops really because the fat, it melts like butter. I mean, it's honestly probably the best part of it. I could eat just pretty much straight fat. I know that sounds crazy, but.
Well, the Idaho pasture pigs have a similar fat to the mangas and the Ossipas, where it's, I've been trying to figure out like the best way to describe it. And I said it in the video a couple times, like soft is the only way I can describe it compared to like a production breed pork. Like, there's just something about a production breed. I saw him. I see him in there. I'm not bringing it up. Like a production breed pork, the fat is solid. Like, even as you're slaughtering it, it holds its form pretty much. And then as soon as you get out of the walk-in, it's solid. You can peel it right off. With some of these heritage breeds, like the mangas, Ossipas, Idaho pasture pigs, it's just softer. Like you can just press on it and it just forms to your finger, putting it into the cooler.
And I noticed when I was processing my sow is it firmed up a little bit when it was cooler, but as soon as I brought it out to break it down, within 15 minutes, it was back to being super greasy. Because from what I understand, I think the melt temperature on that is lower
yes,
than regular lard, pig fat. Like your normal body temperature touching it when you're skinning them and gutting them, it melts the fat off. Like you come out and you're covered in, it looks like you greased yourself up to go to the fucking beach. That's what I feel like after I get done processing.
Those are super fun on those like August days when those guys come in.
Yeah.
It's like, I've walked in.
You're better off just taking the whole thing in the freezer and
exactly. I've walked in before and my wife's just like, what is wrong with you? Because I look like I just got off Magic Mike. I'm just greased up.
Yes.
Like, it's like, what's happening?
Oh, yeah.
I've had it to where I've been on mobile slaughters and it's like I've looked at my truck the next day when it's raining and I've had to like lean over the bed or something. So that just on the side of the truck, there's just a perfect chest and like stomach outline where I was all covered in pig fat and I just pressed myself up against the truck. So water's just ripping off that part because it's completely waterproof.
Well, it makes cleanup. That's a job too. It's terrible. Cleaning the grinders out. Yeah.
And I think like with this sow too is I did overdo it with the fat a little bit because I think that softer fat spreads out differently in the meat when you're making sausage differently. So I think next time I'm going to pull more of the fat out. I didn't even add any back in, but it was just something I noticed like, because I always throw my sausage in the freezer for a couple hours before I do it just to, make it a little bit nicer, colder, it stuffs easier. But yeah, I noticed that with that softer fat, it spreads through that meat a lot more consistent. But it does seem like it puts a lot of fat into it if you're not paying attention. If you got to be careful.
Yeah. Next time I'm definitely going to pull some of the fat, save it. I don't know if I'll need some for when we actually finally butcher a lamb, but it could be an option there to kind of mix it in if we do sausage there.
Yeah. I actually have someone that they bought a pig from me, and they're the people I got my two Santa Gertrudis beef cows from.
Yep.
So the deal to, I didn't have money to buy them at the time, so we just did a deal where they got a quarter of a beef for the next couple years to pay for the cows. So she actually wants me to grind the pork fat from her pigs into the beef to give it. So, and she likes grass-fed beef, but she wants the fat back into the burger so they stick. So it works out in my favor. I get rid of some of the fat, and I'd rather not throw it away if I can help it.
Yeah.
So
I need to go through my chest freezer in the shop and just like I have to do like a lard weekend and just render lard all weekend. I've got a bunch of bear fat, bunch of pork fat, like because I feel bad throwing it away. It's like this is such a resource that nobody uses.
Yeah, a lot of
people, I end up with like 60 pounds of fat that I'm like, what am I doing with this?
I'm assuming a lot of people will not want that, right?
Yeah, it depends on the customers. I'll push it. I'll push people to be like, listen,
take
lard
it.
is not hard.
Yep.
I have videos on it. There are 1,000 videos on it. It's really easy to do. You should do it. And they'll still go, nah. And I go, all right, that's fine.
Well, I think like, cause I was in that mindset too. Like I just started utilizing lard. Like I'm now, cause now we're switching over to a keto carnivore style diet for our whole family. I'm utilizing that lard instead of vegetable oil or some kind of vegetable oil spray. So we're going to be rendering down a bunch, and I'm going to be rendering down leaf lard and giving it to a couple of our family members that does a lot of baking and stuff, just to utilize it. Like you said, I don't want to see it go to waste, but I am seeing a lot more customers starting to take more organs and fat back with them. I think because prices are increasing. So like I explained in my is the butcher taking my meat video, and I just finished the pork one, to get your most money out of paying a processor after you've already raised that animal or paid somebody else to raise that animal. The more you take back, the more weight you take back with you is going to lower your price per pound that you put into it.
Right.
In the general scheme of things, if you can utilize more of that animal that you've already paid for, it's your stuff. If you can figure out a way to use the bones and the fat and, all the extra stuff, all the organs, Even if you're not eating it yourself, find family members that'll eat it. At least you're giving it away and somebody's utilizing it. It's not going to a landfill or a compost pile or whatever happens to it. Feed it to your dogs or whatever.
Well, Joe, we'll jump over to you. How was your meat quality out of these guys?
I wish I had more pictures of the old spot crosses I raised this year. But you got pictures from my Mangalitsa sow. I was very impressed. Like I know I've been knocking the Mangalitsas a lot lately just because profitability wise.
Right.
But this particular sow was just shy of 2 years old. And she was the second Mangalitsa Berkshire Hamp. I think they had a little bit of old spot in there too. But as you can see, my hand in the picture,
that's a small chop for 2 years.
2-year-old, yeah. And I trimmed off probably 2 inches of back fat.
Yeah.
Off of that. I saved all that. I trimmed off anything that had little blemishes or a little bit of drying from hanging in the cooler for a few days. But most of it I saved. But I tried a pork steak the day that I processed her because I wanted to see what the meat was like to see if I was going to save it and put more to sausage. And the flavor was fantastic. It fell apart really good. The marbling was amazing. Like I am super happy with it, but at a money-making standpoint in my area, tough. I can't raise them that long. 2 years is just too long.
Yeah. And
even at, I think most of my breeding stock are getting right around 3 to 5 pounds a day if they're stealing from each other. They're on a maintenance feed, but 3 to 5 pounds a day I wish I had my notepad with me with what my cost breakdowns. That it's a lot of money. I think I worked it out to be like $300 and something just for maintenance feed for a year.
Right.
So now I have $700-800 by the time I bought them, just into maintaining and feeding that pig over a long period of time, probably more than that. By the time I paid for the piglets, I think I paid $125 a piece for them. So I was probably close to $1,000 into that pig. Now, on top of paying the processing, because we're paying the shop for the processing, which is going to be right around $500 or $600 because of her size.
Right.
So if I'm going to spend $1,500 on something, I'd rather just put a half a beef in the freezer or a quarter of a beef, whatever the price works out to be, for that time frame. Now the quality, I can now see and understand why they say raise them out to set 18, 24 months. Right. I got the marbling in there. The flavor was fantastic. The color of the meat was amazing. And if you want to raise Mangalitsas and you have the time and you don't care about that, and you have a nice wood lot with acorns and hickories and stuff like that, I don't have that here to utilize that feed source in the fall to kind of cut back on the commercial feed or restaurants or grocery stores or food pantries that you can pick up vegetables and stuff, because Mangalitsas do utilize that really well. So do the Idaho pasture pigs and stuff. That's great. I encourage you to do it. I'm very impressed with the meat. Just as a farm standpoint and being profitable, I can't justify raising them that long.
And that also seems to be everybody that raises breeds like this. They always seem to be able to pick up, food scraps from local restaurants, things like that, grocery stores. I've asked around in my area, just haven't had any luck with it. But if I could, that's the ticket, because then at that point,
it's
your
huge. It's a huge part of it. I just got back on my local grocery stores list. I go every Friday and pick up. It's like 2 boxes, but it's 2 boxes of veggies that I wouldn't get. Yeah. I've got a farm now that I get 3 buckets of milk whenever they get them. Like whenever they fill up all 3, they'll either come and drop them off. I'll go and pick them up. And if they have any old pastries and stuff like that from their farm stand, because they do their own bread and pastries and stuff, they'll toss that in too. So it's like super helpful for sure.
Yeah.
Especially
if you can find a source of some kind of dairy.
Yeah.
But I always, as a butcher standpoint, don't solely feed your pigs on scraps. It never works out. They don't get the mineral content they want. The fat tends to be, the breeds that we're raising are already super greasy. Right. You feed them straight dairy or straight bread.
Oh my God. The fat basically
you're not gonna enjoy that pork.
No,
it's gonna be
it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, and it goes back, in my instance at least, the whole corn thing. It's a very similar result. So I got to up the protein a little bit. That's the plan for this year, is kind of give them a higher protein content, and hopefully with some of that forage that I can get in there. I would like to start growing some things. I know you talked a little bit about having trees in there as far as like nuts. Obviously, that's a longer term plan. We forage for acorns, things like that. That's always good. But hopefully, again, I can come up with something to at least supplement, because the feed costs, they do. That's obviously the number one input with pigs is always going to be your feed.
Yeah. My feed cost went down. I picked up feed today and it was cheaper. And I was like, did I get the right stuff? And they're like, no, the price went down.
Buy more.
You buy it in bulk and ship it to me and Tyler.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
But
I've actually been doing a lot of research on playing around with mixing your own feed and buying whole ingredients. But then you got, is it worth your time to do it? And do you have the storage capacity to make it worth it?
That's where it gets tough.
I've done it before. I've done it with 5 feeder pigs before, and it's not horrible, especially if you're buying like cornmeal and soybean meal, and most places will sell you the pig minerals. And it doesn't have, if you're just doing feeders, it doesn't have to be a rocket science mixture. No. You want to make sure they're getting enough minerals, that they're getting what they need. And I think it's like most of them are basically like 4-to-1 ratio with the cornmeal versus soybean meal. But then you got it, when you factor in your time, are you actually saving money than just buying a commercially mixed ration? There is a local place that sells a mixture of corn and oats. I think I'm going to try buying a bulk 2,000 pound bins. Yeah. And just supplementing, figuring out the protein ratio in that, and then supplementing maybe a little bit of soybean meal or other means that I can't say on air to even out the ratios. So if you're on my hit list, beware.
Right.
I'm joking.
Never trust a man with a pig farm.
A butcher with a pig farm.
Right. So I guess that leaves me. Yeah, I was pretty pumped. I mean, I wasn't pumped I had to put this boar in the cooler. It was kind of a means to an end kind of thing. For those who have been following the podcast for a while, like I had kept the boar intact to restart the breeding cycle with the boar that we ended up losing. So I picked the best boar out of the group of piglets. We kept him intact. He was going to be our next breeder boar, and he looked great, and I was happy with him. And then I was looking at everything, and I'm like, well, I need a boar for this upcoming cycle. And I kind of was just like, I'll just take whatever, and then we'll just get back to it once he gets of age and stuff like that, so we can get it all figured out. And ended up finding Red, who is pretty damn similar to the genetics I was working with, but even closer to what I was trying to get to. Because I really, again, we hash out these mangas and Osceolas a bunch, and we decided to raise them, so we can only blame ourselves. But I do think the genetics are good, especially for what we're trying to, at least I'm trying to do, with being in a much colder climate, and just the meat quality of them, I think, is amazing. But I really think it's just a dash. Like, you don't need, it's like cayenne pepper. That's exactly it. I like cayenne pepper. If you dump a whole thing of cayenne pepper into whatever you're cooking, it's going to be rough. But if you just put a dash in, it's like, ooh, that brings out some bold flavors I didn't know were there.
Yep. So a little bit goes a long way.
A little bit goes a long way when it comes to mangas and Osceolas, I'm finding out. So we had to figure out what we were going to do, whether I was going to keep them, build another pen with all the ground being frozen and having to shuffle everything around. And it just wasn't going to happen. So we didn't get a pig this year for out of the feeders we raised. So I was like, we'll just put them in put them in our freezer, and it'll give me a good barometer for how they're doing and what's going on. And I was super excited. I'll bring up his chops, and Tyler, I promise this is the last time you're going to get blocked out of the podcast.
This is the last time you're getting Kyle's meat in your face.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the cross cut off of him. So these are the shoulders right off the edge of the rib chop.
Yeah.
And again, this is a 6-month-old animal. And yes, it is small for sure, but the marbling that's already in there is insane. And I've posted a bunch of pictures about like my Herefords and stuff like that. And that's what I was shocked about. Again, it's a much smaller frame, but that could be a Hereford pork chop. Like, so I'm happy with them for sure. I'm not over the moon happy like I was when they were born, but again, it's gonna be a learning experience. All right.
Rachel's question.
Yeah, Brown.
I would assume that you would want to take the hull off because there's a lot of tannins in a black walnut, the husk or the hull of it.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of trappers use them for boiling their traps in or whatever. All those tannins can actually become toxic to a lot of animals. Pigs are fairly smart on foraging, so they might just shred them off themselves. But if you only have a couple of pigs and you don't want to take the risk, or if they're in a confinement pen, like we were talking about your setup, and you would need a small confinement, maybe a composting style pen. I probably would go the extra mile and take the hulls off, just not to risk it.
Just to be sure.
Honestly. And they're very hard. I'm sure that the pigs can crush them. I don't know. I've never fed walnuts. I got a couple of small black walnuts. I thought about trying it myself. I do collect hickories and acorns. Actually, the piglets this year found that hole in the fence and cleaned up the red acorns underneath the trees like crazy. Like now that the snow melted off this week, I was up at the cabin talking to my grandfather a couple days ago, and I was looking at the yard, and I got to roll it. Like they've turned the whole yard over down there. But which is fine. It needed some aeration. I'm not too upset. Less grass. I got to mow first thing in the spring. I love mowing. I just don't have the time to do it, and then it irritates the crap out of me when the lawn gets overgrown and looks like crap. Like I can't stand when the lawn looks like garbage, but at the same time, I don't have the time to keep up on it like I want it to look.
Oh, I don't care. I don't care about my lawn whatsoever. My buddies give me shit because my wife mows the lawn. Like that's her thing.
Same here.
I couldn't care less. I could not care less about what my lawn looks like. So I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
I just, while I was breaking down that sow, I did a real quick video that I'm going to be putting out in the next week or two on that. And then I'm processing my last Mangalitsa cross. He's 50% Mangalitsa. He's out of that Idaho pasture boar cross. And then my Berkshire cross ham in Mangalitsa. So I'm going to do him in my last old spot feeder and do a side-by-side comparison of weights, fat content, marbling if it's there, chop size, and yields at the end. Because another thing I noticed with the Mangalitsa crosses, especially, I can't remember back to when I did Idaho pasture pigs, the amount of sausage you get off those animals is a lot less than you're going to get off after you trim the fat off. So I did a sow that was 360 something pounds. That first big sow that I did. Yeah. I can't remember her exact weight, but she was high. I think she was 380 something pounds. But that sow hung at 367. I got 67 pounds of sausage off that sow versus 180 pounds off the other sow. Now I took a lot more cuts off this sow of mine than what those other people took. But even if I turned it all into sausage, I probably would end up with like 120-ish pounds of sausage. So that's 60 pounds less out of a 20-pound variation in hang weight. So say 40 pounds difference versus what I took off in fat that went to a ground sausage. So that's another thing to think if you're getting into them. Just realize you're getting a lot less meat content. So I did see a pretty interesting video the other day while I was processing the pigs on how to turn pig lard into biodiesel to run in a diesel motor, an older diesel motor.
That's pretty
It's pretty cool. I actually saved it. I want to go back. So I was listening to it, but he had all the equations on how to do it popped up. So I want to go back and actually physically watch it. I thought it was interesting. I mean,
well,
if anything, it's a good thing to know.
Right. And we've kind of touched on it through all of this. We've gone back and forth with it, but again, none of these breeds are bad to raise. Like, again, none of us are telling you that these are the breeds. Yep. These are the ones you absolutely need to. It's just the education on them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people are doing people any favors, like pushing stuff. I was laughing my ass off. I was in a Barnes & Noble yesterday, which is not my natural habitat. My skin kind of burned as I walked in. I was like, and my wife was off in Harry Potter land. I don't even know what she was doing. She walked in like Willy Wonka's factory. Like, so I'm over in like the farming homesteading section, because where else am I going to go? And I'm thumbing through books, and it was like one of the books I picked up. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was like the go-to guide for backyard animal raising. Yeah. And it had a list in the middle of it of it had like a pull-out page with a bunch of awesome graphics and this, that, and the other. Like, these are the best breeds you could possibly have. And the number one, like, going into cattle was Scottish Highland. And I'm like, I put the book down immediately. I'm like, this is the dumbest book.
No.
So it's just situations like that where it's like, you're going out there and putting this book out in mass production with just your experience on this. Mm-hmm. And it's like the fact that I opened a book and their go-to for a small cow for a backyard farm is literally the devil. Like, I can't trust you. But that's what a lot of people are getting, where they're getting all of this information about these breeds that they're great if you got a little time under your belt and understand what you're getting into, or even just have someone really sit you down and go, you're not getting what you think you're going to get with this animal. Well, that's now that you know that, go on and have an amazing time learning and growing and producing for yourself, but don't have illusions of what you're doing.
That's where YouTube can be very dangerous, because what works for somebody, I mean, that's not going to work for a lot of people. Everything's situational with all of this stuff. So depending on where you're at, that's another thing. Depending where you're located, there's certain things that just doesn't matter what animal it is. There's certain things that just they're not going to work.
Yeah. Right. But that being said, I think the three of us do take a lot of time out to point out to people what we are doing works for us. It might not work for you. Like, that's one of the first things I said when I started my channel. Like, I'm here to give you ideas and encourage you and show you what I'm doing. But a lot of stuff that I do is a mashup of other things other people were doing that I took from YouTube and personal experiences. And I made all those things come together and work for my farm. I completely agree.
I always say that too in my videos. I'm like, I don't claim to be an expert. This is what I'm doing. And, take what you want out of it, because exactly that. I'm taking a lot of things from a lot of other people, pulling that stuff kind of, and some of it, honestly, I'm just kind of winging it to be straightforward. So, anyway, I have a question for you guys. As we're talking pigs here, you guys butcher them all the time. At what point does boar taint become a thing? I know, Kyle, you just butchered one young. You hear it all the time, and I obviously haven't experienced that, but I'm sure a lot of people wonder that out there.
So that's a bit of a loaded bag, because there's a bunch of different people talking about a bunch of different stuff. I don't really smell boar taint. It just doesn't affect me. It's a lot of it, with a lot of research they've done now, it's a genetic thing where either you have it or you don't. Because I've seen it. The old at the old USDA plant I was at, my boss's wife could not walk into the walk-in cooler if they were slaughtering pigs and they had a boar come in. She would just be like, can't even do it. Yeah. I've heard of people not even being able, sending food back at a restaurant, because it was a boar slipped in, and it was I can't eat this. I just put a boar in. There was nothing. We ate it. There's nothing to it. Again, it was 6 months old. So it was just coming into.
And that's why I'm asking. We put 2 in, and I don't, as far as well, it wasn't mine. It was my dad's and my buddy's. But as far as I know, there was no issue there.
That being said, now that we have Red here, I can walk out my front door and go, oh, yeah, we got a boar on the property again. Like boars have a very distinct smell.
Yep.
That doesn't always translate into the meat, but if you have a sexually active pit, like a mature boar who's getting work done, you run the risk. Like, it's better be on the safer side and grind it.
Yeah.
And heavily season it. But again, it could be right around a year. Like if you got a boar that's about a year old, and especially if he has already like bred or has been trying, he's got that testosterone running, you run the risk of boar taint. But again, at the same time, it's going to be a person-to-person basis.
Yep. And it's also genetic. Like you said, it's a lot of it has to do with genetics. That pure Mangalitsa that I got when I bought him, I was told he was a Barrow. He was not. And with the Mangalitsas and Asabas, their man parts don't descend like a lot of the commercial breeds. They kind of stay up, tucked up for the most part. After they fully mature at around a year and a half old, you can notice. And I started like, man, he looks like kind of like a boar, but he didn't look like my other boar. I mean, you knew he was a boar.
Yep.
But when I processed him, he was 13 months old, no boar taint. But when I worked at the USDA plant, we didn't process for customers. We only processed what our farm that was connected to the butcher shop raised. We bought in 70 to 80 feeders every other month, and they were all York crosses raised in a commercial refinement operation on my old boss's farm. Same thing with his beef cattle. And if you got one that had descended or a testicle that held back, or they didn't castrate it in the group, 6 months old when we were processing those pigs, you knew there was a boar in there coming from that commercial herd. They were in with, if the commercial pigs tend to mature and become sexually reproductive earlier than the heritage breeds. I know Herefords are known for that, to become mature earlier. So if your herd does have boar taint in it, you have a commercial style pig, if it's there, it comes with maturity. As soon as that boar is mature and is around sows or gilts that are getting to that age where he's gonna start getting that, like Kyle said, the testosterone and the pheromones working, and then that's when you're gonna see, because I can smell boar taint when I'm processing pigs. Like, it stands out to me, and I don't like the smell of it. I mean, it doesn't overpower me like I get sick off it or anything, but I know. I'm like, yeah, he has boar taint. Better off doing sausage or seasonings or something up.
Yeah. And when we say genetics, I mean it on the person side and the pig side itself.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Because you can have
some people can't smell it.
Some people can't smell it. Some people can't taste it. Some people can. Some pigs will have it. And if they breed, like if a boar has boar taint, then he breeds with a sow and they have a boar, that boar will have boar taint.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, it's progressive with that. And like back with the Mangalitsas and stuff like that too, me and Joe have talked about this. Just because the pig smells, just because a boar smells doesn't mean it's going to have boar taint. Like, we've got the mangas that there is something about mangas that they are pungent. You have mangas on the farm when you walk out, and it's like, oh boy, like there's something going on here. But yeah, again, I don't worry about it too much unless it is like a 500-pound boar that's been breeding for 4 years. And it's like, so you want a bunch of sausage, huh?
I mean, our big guy. Sorry, go ahead.
If it's something that, putting it out to the audience, if it's something that you're really, really worried about, castrate when they're young.
Yeah.
Or make sure you find genetics, and it's not breed to breed basis. It's that genetic line. Find genetics. I know, there's a lot of people on YouTube and stuff that talk about this, where they've bred it out of their herd, so they don't even castrate. They just process before a certain age before they start, and some of them, will separate the boars from the gilts just in case. I'd rather just castrate. It's not
so
that
much
bad.
easier.
I mean,
it's not easier. That day sucks, but
yeah. But you don't have to worry about it. You put them all together. You're not worried about separating. You're not have to worry about accidental breedings. But yeah, that would be my advice. Either find the genetics that it's not going to be a problem, or just castrate at a couple weeks old if you can get a hand on them, or 8 weeks like I have done in the past when you can get them separated from their mother.
Right. Yeah.
Well, 6 of our 7 piglets, they were gilts, so you know where he's going to end up. The lone wolf there.
Well, yeah, at that point, I would heavily suggest just castrating it, just because that's going to be a pain in the ass having a lone wolf pig, because that's one more paddock you got to have, and you're not going to have a fun time with him.
Well, you said you didn't castrate the last ones, right, Tyler? You didn't have an issue?
No.
Yeah.
But now again, I was only about 8 months, so I would imagine, like you guys are saying, probably a little bit longer. But I also don't ever smell our big boar. I don't ever smell anything with him. Like, obviously I've been around pigs before and kind of know, that smell, but I don't smell a whole lot with him. So maybe not.
Yeah. I just want to address Rachel down here.
I was just going to do that.
Yeah. Rich Brown says, you guys wasted no time proposing my idea of having pot-bellied pigs, all because you think everyone likes chops. I don't like chops. I'm not a big chop guy.
I'm a bacon guy.
I'm a bacon guy.
And that's where we're going with it, Rachel.
Right. The reason
pot-bellied pigs are fatty, flabby. I've heard the meat tastes like crap.
You're not going to get anything off of them. You're not.
Yeah.
Like it's the long and the short of it. You are going to get a lot of fat and not great meat off of them.
But
I know
I
know a lot of that probably comes from Josh. Josh preached pot bellies, which I don't blame him. Like, it worked for him, but he was a butcher and had a very different way of looking at it. He raised pot bellies like broilers. Mm-hmm. Like, he would just move them around. He'd move them around in like a chicken tractor.
Tyler, you weren't around when Josh.
We were talking about that before the show.
Yeah,
but he would move them around in a chicken tractor. And process the males really early. Like this big, and have crock pot pigs, that's fine. That's great. But it's not an ideal way to raise pork. I mean, depending on the space you have, if you want to do it that way, great. But your turnover is nuts.
Yeah. So, like, if you want to raise, do it. Go ahead, try it. Give us your feedback. You might enjoy it,
but go ahead and do it.
Rachel, I think I know a guy that might have a litter of guinea hog Hampshire crosses this spring. We're not that far.
You guys are close.
Yeah. But no, if you want to try it and to see if it works for you, by all means, go for it. Like, I'd never tell anybody not to try it. We're just telling you from our experiences what we don't like. And if you're just looking for some ground sausage and a little bit of bacon to play around with, and maybe a ham, you're going to get a lot of lard. And that's the thing too, is once you have so much lard, it's pretty much a throwaway product if you don't find a way to utilize it somehow. Because you only can store, you can render lard down and store it in a can it or whatever, hot can it, and you could have a whole pantry full of lard, but you only can use so much of that lard. You can give it away to family and friends, whatever. Eventually, you're going to run out of space to store that lard, and it's going to become a throwaway product. Unless
One of my favorite things is to gift lard to people. It's so funny, especially the people that don't understand what lard is. It's so funny because it is a nice thing. It's like, you can cook with this and add amazing flavor, and it's healthy. Like, it's not as scary as every cardiologist has said it is for the past 50 years. Like, this is
Fat,
actually
you
good
can't
for
have
you.
fat. It's bad for you.
Exactly. But it's the look on someone. It warms my heart when I hand someone a jar of bear fat. Oh, the look on their face when they're like, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's rendered down bear fat. And they're like, okay, what do I do with it? I'm like, well, you can cook with it. You can waterproof your boots with it. You can lubricate your firearms with it. And they're just like, none of those three things go together. Like, it warms my heart.
That's
just
the beauty
those
of
little
it.
moments that just freak people out. I love it. So, Rachel, we still love you. Get Potbellies. We don't care.
We'll follow along with your journey.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while,
we'll have you on in approximately 12 to 14 months to tell us why you won't be raising potbelly pigs again. If you can sit in your chair because you're so covered in grease that you slip out of it, we would love to hear about why you're no longer going to be raising potbelly pigs.
Yep.
Well, we're up over an hour, boys. So, Tyler, where can everyone find you?
Yes, mainly on YouTube at Evergreen Farm 19. Put out videos of, all sorts of stuff. Pigs, like we're talking today, sheep, chickens, just general homesteading and farming. Also on Instagram and TikTok. Not extremely active, but I'm definitely doing my best to stay on there as well. Same handle, Evergreen Farm 19.
Joe, what do we got?
Same as always. Blakeslee Acres on YouTube, Facebook, and every week here with Kyle on Meet the Critters.
Fantastic. And you can find me everywhere at Backwoods Butcher 603. So that is YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I have been slacking aggressively on all of my content. That is why YouTube got 2 videos this week. I've been trying to push out some videos on TikTok, but they just kind of went through and they tightened up on just about everything. They took a bunch of music off. I've tried to post a couple of videos the past couple weeks, and they've been flagged immediately. And I'm like, I know Tiffany's trying to get off of TikTok altogether.
Thanks for the heads up on that.
Yeah. Sorry. But no, it stinks because I enjoy TikTok. I'm still going to be posting and doing stuff. I just need to get out of where we are. I know I've talked about it in a couple shows. Just shop's been slow, getting off cigarettes. It's been an interesting couple weeks and trying to figure out all the content stuff on top of it has been fun. So I appreciate all the people that have been sticking around and still commenting, still liking, and I think I've gained about 10 subscribers this week, so I appreciate that from everybody. Nice. So other than that, this has been the start of this collaboration. I love these. We definitely just need to continue doing these.
Oh, they're awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
it's definitely a lot of fun.
Once a quarter or something.
Yep.
Just
and
to
if
try
you're
to...
from Opus Clip and you're hearing this, I'm still fucking pissed at you guys. I'm still fighting with them.
Yeah. I haven't put anything.
It started working for me, but I really didn't get any luck with the help, so I don't know.
I've literally been back and forth with them multiple times every week since it started, like 3 weeks ago. At this point, it's like, you guys owe me some fucking money because me and Kyle have not been able to utilize what we paid for.
Sure.
And we only had 2-3 weeks maybe of use out of it.
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks. And it was going good. We enjoyed it, but I get the same questions over and over, and I have to keep giving the same responses to multiple different people. It's like, just to fix the damn thing.
Yep.
Yeah. That's where we just become old men, and it's like, can I talk to someone on the phone, please? Like, I would like to talk to a person. That would be fantastic.
That's the problem is we put all of our faith in this fucking AI crap, and now we're getting shafted by the computer
I know you're
system.
all autistic. You don't have to make eye contact. We're on a phone. Talk me through what's going on here. I know pigs, not computers. Like,
yes. We'll get through it eventually, but
we'll figure it out. I mean,
it's frustrating. You use it free forever, no problems. As soon as you go and pay for it, like
we'll upload this one in there and we'll see what we can get out, and we'll try and figure it out.
Send me a link to that editing software you told me to put on the laptop. I'm going to try it on here.
Okay.
Maybe tomorrow.
Sounds good. Well, everybody, we appreciate everybody hanging out. We had a good turnout tonight. I think we had 13 in here at one point.
Yeah.
Bunch of comments. We appreciate everybody in the comments.
Yep.
Yeah, we love all you guys. Everyone watching now, everyone listen after. And this has been Meet the Critters. So we'll see you guys next time.